Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to SA Accounting Academy. Here's a short clip on one of our previous webinars. I hope that you really do enjoy it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third session. Can you believe it? Just for those of you, as you can see, those of you that have been online before, we had some technical issues. So instead of having Bronwyn doing a mad flying, low flying, slightly challenging dash across the neighborhood, we actually decided to start today's session together. We are both safe and happy, so even though we might not technically be socially distanced 100%, we're all good and happy, and we have set ourselves up so that we can chat and be together for today's session. I might be off camera for a bit, but I'll be coming back, and I am lurking in the background, literally like a stalker. So I am around, and today is we talk about risk management and internal control. So as you can see, when something doesn't work, there's always a plan B to make sure that we can get the system to work, and I think we're taking that as an example today.
Managing our risk really well today.
Managing our risk really well today. South African infrastructure, making sure that everything works. One of the other things, just as a matter of admin, I know some of you are looking for session one. Session one, due to those technical issues, which we didn't anticipate, is going to be recorded and is going to be loaded onto the profiles. Once it's recorded, we finally got a slot with our media person that we can get the recording done this week. So as soon as that recording is up and done, you'll know that it's on the profile and on the system, and you'll be notified, I'm sure. So session one, we are a little bit behind on, and we do apologize for that. But life carries on and the show must go on. So today is pretty much session 3 on risk management and internal controls. As we know with accounting and with finance, you have to have a good system of control. You've got to have a good system in which generates the information that we're going to work with. So that is really what we are going to be looking at today. As you can see, that is me, and that is my bio. So if you're interested as to who is behind this portion of the team, that is me. And then there is Bronwyn. So you can see we really are who we say we are. We might turn the camera off later just from a data connectivity issue. Sometimes it just sometimes the data can cause connectivity challenges when we've got the cameras on, but we'll keep the cameras on as much as we can. So on that, I'm going to hand over to Bronwyn to start, and I will be the voice in the background chirping from the peanut gallery. It is my favorite spot to be in, and I really do enjoy and welcome you to the session, and hope that you enjoy it and make the most of it. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Caryn. Okay. Good morning, everybody. And yes, that's me. I'm Bronwyn, and welcome to session number 3. It's quite a long session in terms of the fact that I've got quite a few slides to go through with you today. So I'm going to try and stick to some kind of schedule and not let myself wander off and get too bogged down by wonderful explanations and too distracted by my passion for the public sector. So I am, but going to move through them rather quickly just to make sure that we get through what I feel is very valuable for you in this space today. But again, I just want to reiterate what Caryn just said. We're watching the chats. Please put comments in if you've got them. Ask questions if you have them. If I can't answer your question for some reason, I'll tell you. But if I can, we can discuss it. And then any inputs that anybody else has into those issues, you're welcome to put them into the chat. So today, the session objectives, the session is called Risk Management and Internal Control. As auditors and accountants, we're quite familiar with the concept of internal control. It comes very naturally to us. So one of the things that you'll find out as an accountant, for example, when you do work in the public sector, is that something that is like breathing to us. This concept of internal control is something that's not really all that comfortable, and it's not a really common space for other people to be in. And one of the outcomes of today's session is actually the last one, is to understand how the knowledge that we have about internal controls are actually used, how that knowledge can be used to help to manage risk in the public sector. Okay, so we're talking about the public sector today. The issue or the concept of risk management is definitely not limited to the public sector. And I actually feel that the private sector has been allowed space to be a lot better at certain aspects of risk management than people in the public sector have. Risk management management is a quite intuitive and very organization and industry specific response. So it's not one of those things that you can say there's a one size fits all approach and everybody in the public sector has to identify and assess the following risks in the following way. It's very intuitive. The rest of the public sector works, as we were discussing in the previous session, very much on a regulatory basis. So it's different to the private sector, where the private sector says, well, the acts and the legislation says you can really do what you want, except for you may not do these things. Listed in the Companies Act, for example, where in the public sector, you may not do anything unless it is allowed and required by a law or a regulation of some sort. And then we have risk management, which doesn't give any of those guidelines. The public sector is very used to working in a very regulated environment, and now they're expected to do something, which is really critical, as you'll see, to government's objectives of service delivery. Now they're expected to implement processes that are not regulation guideline specific, and they battle. Right, so the objectives of today's session in the context of that discussion is to understand the theory of risk management in the public sector. So the theory of risk management is the theory of risk management. It applies to private sector, public sector, non-profits, you name it. However, what are the little quirks, or how does it come through in the public sector for us? So understanding the theory of risk management will be what drives it, what's behind the process, what are we trying to do, what are the steps that we follow, and that follows into the process for risk management. So what is it that governments are actually doing, and how do their processes fit into this risk management? Then, once we've identified the process for risk management and how some of those risks are articulated and how they are plotted and planned through a risk process, a risk management process, is to identify how we respond to those risks. For me, it's quite an interesting discussion about the fact that when we identify risks, there are actually a number of different responses that we can use. The most commonly used one is internal controls, but the responses allow for the governments to then take that and work it into their strategic plans, work it into their systems of internal control, so that they're managing those risks and so that they can then ensure a better chance of service delivery happening. Then we'll touch on the role players in the risk management process. So we actually have touched on these role players at a number of points. So we touched on them in the public sector context, where we discussed the structures of government and who are really responsible for what. And we went into it in more detail last week because we spoke about governance. Yeah. So risk management is one of the key functions within governance. It's true in the private sector and in the public sector. So this risk management module follows really well into or from the module on governance that we spoke about last week.
So I'm just bringing myself into the space because I'm sitting listening, going, wait, hang on a sec. This is I need to chirp a little bit more freely. But anyway, carry on.
Okay, please feel free to interrupt me too. So we'll go through the role players in the risk management process, and there'll be who are technically the role players, but there's a point we're going to make towards the end of this module, and I think I might emphasize it a few times throughout, and exactly the same thing that we ended up with last week, is that governance, risk management, and internal control are not the sole responsibility of certain structures within a governance structure or within an entity or department or a municipality, etc. It's actually everybody's responsibility every single day. Yeah. And that goes in with the ethics conversation that we had last week.
I mean, it's keeping yourself, each person each day, reminding themselves what they're there for, and keeping a pulse check of the environment that they're in. Also, what I always see in the private sector is that, the responsibility of juniors to have a structure in order to report up and a safe place to speak to people when they see things. So one of the things with risks that I always am aware of in the private sector, and maybe, like you say, intuitively we're aware of it, but people don't often think that as a receptionist or as somebody fairly junior, you will see things going wrong. You will see problems. You'll see, the whole definition of risk is the difference between actual and expected. This is what you want to happen. This is what actually happens. And what is the gap between those two, and how likely is it that there will be a difference between the two, and what can you do about it? So you're thinking here in public sector, it's about service delivery. So what is the chance of service delivery won't happen? And what are the barriers or the problems to that service delivery not happening? That's, to me, when you start talking, where my head is thinking. So that those junior staff sometimes see the problems. They're on the ground. They're dealing with the issues. Is there a system of communication through the governance structures to be able to communicate that? So then there can be a plan to address it. But without that communication, there can be a disconnect between those in the higher ups and those at the bottom. And there's the frustration.
Absolutely. So what we're trying to get through throughout this course is exactly that.
I hope that you enjoyed that video. For more of our webinar videos, go to www.accountingacademy.co.za. Thank you and have a lovely day.